the house was definitely on fire. And it was clear that this was no accident, because not only was it on fire on this side, it was also on fire on this side, and there were tiny little patches of fire all around the house. There was no question about it. Somebody had done this on purpose. Richard quick got Otto, and the two of them started working furiously to put it out. And they're beating the fire down with clothing here, beating it down with clothing over here. But they're not making any progress. All of a sudden they hear a voice on the outside saying, "My father's in there, my father's in there." The drunk guards assure her, "Nobody's in there." She says, No, I know my father's in there. I saw him go in there." They said, "Nobody is in there." She said, "The house is on fire." They said, "The house is not on fire." And Trudi pushed past them and charged into the house. Richard quick grabbed her arm and motioned for her to be quiet. "Nobody can know we're in here," she said. "Don't worry, I won't tell anyone." She said, "My father set this fire. I saw him do it." They said, that's fine, but we've got to put it out." And so the three of them started working to put the fire out, but still, it was gaining ground faster than they were putting it out. And finally they realized, this is not going to end well. We've got to get out of here. Trudi said, "I'll go out the front door. You guys run out the back. I'll create a distraction with the guards, and you guys get back to the secret church." They said, "Okay, we'll do it." And they took off out the back door. She took off out the front door. But by the time they got outside and they were at the edge of the woods, they realized this plan was not going to work. Because you see, so many people had seen the fire and a crowd was beginning to gather, and they realized they could not run into the woods without being seen. So they said, "Quick, let's just hide the stuff here. We'll split up. We'll be around the fire, and we'll see what we can do." So they did that. They heard the murmuring in the crowd. "Hey, who do you think started this fire? Do you think it was Thor Jansen?" No way. Thor Jansen would have never done this. He was too good of a man. Plus, he took great pride in this home. After all, this was the nicest home in the entire town. There's no possible way he would have burned his own house down. "Yeah, that's true. Hey, you know who I bet did this? Hugo Schwartz. That man would do anything to get Anabaptists." Yeah, he would. And there was Hugo Schwartz pacing back and forth. All of a sudden, the overseer rode up on a horse as quick as he could, and he yelled at the guards, "You fools! In your drunken ignorance, you've lit Hugo Schwartz's house on fire." Hugo said, "No, there's a mistake. This isn't my house. My house was the one next door before you took it." And they said, "Yes, but here's the thing. You were proved innocent, and so as a gift, we were going to give you this house." Oh my goodness. You should have seen Hugo Schwartz's face. It turned as white as snow, which was seen in the firelight.
And you said it was the best house in the neighborhood.
And so,
Not anymore.
okay, guys, you make a choice. You can tell the story or I can. But I know what's next, so. So anyway, then the overseer turned his wrath upon the guards and he said, "You are gonna pay for burning this house down." And they said, "We didn't do it, we didn't do it." And they quick were looking for someone to point at. And then they saw the perfect person. After all, they had watched her run into the house. And they said it was her, and they pointed at Trudi. Hugo Schwartz knew that it wasn't Trudi, and he knew he couldn't let this happen. And so he stepped in and he said, "It was not Trudi. I know it was not Trudi. There's no way my daughter would have done this. I know who it was." Everyone stopped and looked at him and said, "Who did it?" And just then, he saw Otto. But of course, he thought it was Richard, because he never could tell them apart. And so he said it was him right there, Richard Jansen. Otto quickly handed the tunic that had the list in it to Richard, and he said, "Run!" as the guards grabbed him and were about to haul him away. Richard didn't know what to do. He was stuck in a little bit of a quandary because, you see, if this list was to get caught, who knows how many Anabaptists would be caught and possibly be put to death. But if he didn't help his cousin, who knows what would happen to him? Maybe his own cousin would be put to death. Richard didn't know what to do. But he decided the only thing he could do at this time was to run, and he took off, running. In the midst of all the commotion, Otto too got away from the guards, and the overseer says, "Forget him, we'll get him later. Right now, let's put the fire out." And Otto joined Richard as they ran to the woods. Trudi came also, and the three of them realized there's no possible way we can find the secret church at this time of night. It was much too dark. And so they realized they were just going to have to sleep on the edge of the woods that night. And as soon as the day broke, they wound their way back to the secret church, and they found Mother and Father, and they told them the story. And Mother almost looked pleased to hear that her house was burned. And she said, "Well, now God will have to provide." And so they tried to figure out, okay, where are we going to go next? Because there's no possible way we can survive living here in the woods. And so there were two options they were debating. Uncle Sigmund was saying, well, we should definitely go to Strasbourg. At Strasbourg, there's Melchior Hoffman. Although he's in prison, he has thousands of followers. It is a great place to be. But Thor Jansen, on the other hand, was saying, you know what? I really want to hear more from Menno Simmons. I keep hearing people who've come from him, and I've heard fantastic things. I want to go to Friesland. And so, after a lot of debate, they finally agreed, okay, Friesland makes more sense. Let's go there. They got up early the next morning, and they sent Richard and Otto ahead to scout. The road was blocked by soldiers. There was no possible way they were going to make it to Friesland. And so they said, well, this makes it clear. We are going to have to go to Strasbourg. But this is going to be trickier than we thought. We've got to be careful. What we're going to do is we have this list, and this list basically can operate like a map, because we can go to somebody's house and they will tell us who to go to house next that's one day walk away. We cannot go as two families together. We're going to have to separate. And so Otto and his family went ahead first. Richard and his family were going to go next. And when they got ready to go, the road to Strasbourg was also blocked. Where are we going to go, they said. Then Richard had an idea. He said, what if we go to Munich? Well, that's the worst idea ever. I mean, Munich, everybody was already chased out of there. That's a terrible place to go. But Mother said, wait, no. Let's think about this for a minute. It's such a terrible place to go that no one would think of it. Father said, yes. And so they started on the road to Munich. When they got to Munich, Father had remembered one of the names on the list was the blacksmith in town. And so they went to the blacksmith, and he helped them find a house right around the corner from the cathedral. And they set up a house and a shop there, and Father began working as a carpenter. There was lots and lots of business, and pretty soon they had built relationships with all the other Anabaptists there in the city. And they would have secret meetings. And Richard, it was often his job to go through and deliver messages from one home to the next. And one day, he was winding through the city streets, walking along the cobblestone, when he saw a figure. It was a figure he knew well. It was a walk he had seen before. It was Hugo Schwartz. What is he doing in Munich? Richard got behind him and watched him walk. He followed him up from a safe distance, from corner to corner, and he watched Hugo Schwartz go into the town hall. What does this mean? When he got home, he found out that the blacksmith had stopped by while he was out. And the blacksmith had alerted them there was a new committee. A new committee to find all the Anabaptists. Oh no. It was starting again. We needed to warn people. And so Richard went out to warn people. And as he was walking along, he heard a voice. Richard Jansen, is that you? Richard turned around, and who was it? It was Trudi. Trudi, what are you doing here? She said, I ran away from my father. I can't live in his home anymore. And I decided I'm going to come here and I'm going to find a family to live with. But Trudi did not look well. Richard said, are you feeling okay? She said, not the best. Richard, tell me, have you been baptized? Not yet. Why not? I'm not ready. Why aren't you ready? I don't know, okay? Just leave me alone. Well, Richard, when you get baptized, I'm going to get baptized, she said. Okay. But right now, let's get home. And she didn't argue, and they went home. And Mother took care of her, and pretty soon she was feeling better. And Mother said to Richard, you know, if she's going to work for a family and live with them, maybe it should just be our family. Oh, Richard was excited by this idea. And so Trudi began to live with them and help around the house. And one day, Trudi said, Richard, when are you going to get baptized? Richard said, stop. No, really, tell me when. Richard said, okay, here's the thing. I don't know. Why don't you know? She said. Because I don't know yet. And when I know, I'll know. Please stop pushing me. Okay, she said, I won't bring it up again, but when you're ready to get baptized, let me know. Because I want to get baptized too. Richard said, okay. With this new committee, though, and Hugo Schwartz being in town, they realized they were going to have to do something. There wasn't a lot of time left in Munich, and so they needed to have a meeting to gather together all of the Anabaptists to decide what are we going to do. Are we going to try to leave before things get too rough or not? And so Richard went out to notify everyone of what was happening. He went from house to house and let them know, and he came home exhausted, waiting for everyone to come to the meeting, and he heard a knock at the door. He went over, he slid the bolt open and opened it, not sure who he would see. And there in front of him was a boy his own size. Otto, what are you doing here? Otto said, well, we finally decided to leave Strasbourg because Melchior Hoffman died, and we came here. How did you know we were here? Oh, news travels. We heard about you here. Well, come in. And they started talking, and they talked about seeing Hugo Schwartz. They talked about the new committee. And Otto said, I've got bad news, though. He said, you know the list? They said, yeah. You still got it? And he said, no. Hugo Schwartz has it. How did Hugo Schwartz get the list? He snuck up behind me and he grabbed it from me. Oh no, this isn't good. What if when he was going into town hall, he was taking the list in there? What if the committee already has the list? What are we going to do? As they were talking about it, figuring it out, they realized things were worse than they had thought. Then there was another knock at the door. They opened the door. Hugo Schwartz. Hugo Schwartz came in, and he said in his own devious little way, He said, I have something you want. And he pulled out the list and waved it in the air. Father almost jumped out of his chair to get it, and Hugo quickly pulled it back, and he said, no, not that easily. If you want this, you're going to have to pay for it. Father said, are you suggesting what I think you're suggesting? He said, well, it depends on what you think. I'm suggesting that you can buy this from me. And then you, your family, and your friends can be safe, and I can have some extra money. Father said, that's bribery. Hugo looked at him and said, no. It's called money making. Trudi, who was in the other room, burst in and she said, absolutely not, Father. You give him that list right now. Now, Hugo Schwartz had thought Trudi was dead, and his face lit up for just a moment. And then, just as quickly as it lit up, it turned, and he said, wait a minute. You don't tell me what to do. You're my daughter, and you're going to come with me. She said, I will not. And he said, oh, yes, you will. And she said, no, I'm not. And I'll tell you why I'm not. He said, oh, why? And she says, because I know what you've done. And if you don't hand over that list and turn around and walk out this door right now, I'm going to tell the Prince Bishop what you did. He doesn't take kindly to people burning his houses. Her father looked shaken for a moment, but then with new resolve, he looked at her and he said, no, you're coming with me. And she said, you underestimate how deep his dungeons are. And he said, but Trudi, you're my daughter, you have to come with me. And she said, okay, I'll tell you what, you hand over the list and I will go with you. He said, okay. And so he handed over the list, and Trudi took his hand. And they turned to walk out. Richard wanted to stop them. He wanted to say, no, Trudi, don't. Because who knows if this list was of any value anymore? What if he'd already taken it to the town hall? What if it was no use? Is Trudi sacrificing herself for absolutely nothing? He didn't know what to do or say, and so, like Richard often did, he was frozen with fear. And he didn't move a muscle. And Trudi and Hugo Schwartz walked out. Just as they had left, in came soldiers. And they said, Thor Jansen, you're under arrest for being a leader of the Anabaptists.